Hey, welcome back. I think the leaf blower guy's done. I waited about half an hour, so hopefully he's done. He's not just taking a break or something. So today I'm going to spoil all of Midnight Mass. I'm going to talk about it. It's a Netflix show that I really like because it's about religion-y stuff. Okay, so I'm just gonna spoil it, and I set it up yesterday. So it's about this little island town, 130 people. This pastor comes in, he starts doing miracles, and you're like, how's he doing that? And then at the end of like the third episode, he has a monologue where he's like, it turns out that I was the old man who used to live here, and I was the pastor who left to Jerusalem. Then I got like lost in a windstorm, and I went into this ruins, and I saw this thing, and so like this, he sees these eyes in the darkness, and then it jumps at him, and it bites him on the neck. And then he cuts his palm, and he lets him drink the blood, and so he becomes a vampire. So that's the whole story. Is the pastor's a vampire, but the cool thing is that this whole island community is kind of responding to these miracles that this guy's doing. So they all become super religious because they're like, he's doing miracles. Because the blood of the vampire can heal people. I'm not sure if that's like a canonical thing with vampires. But, so he puts I think what he does, I'm not 100% sure. They might explain this later. But I think he puts the blood of the vampire in the communion wine. And so then everybody who takes communion drinks the blood, and they like start healing. This one lady has dementia, and she starts to become lucid. This one guy's back hurts, and his back doesn't hurt anymore. So I wanted to talk about so what happens, the main like thing of this show is that the pastor keeps interpreting all this vampire stuff as Christian mythology. So he's saying like the vampire is an angel. He kind of looks like an angel. He's got wings. They did a good job with like this monster. He looks kind of creepy, but also kind of, I don't know, when you read the Old Testament and they describe angels, it's like terrifying. He's got like 4 wings and like 20 eyes. And what the pastor says is like, oh, in the Old Testament, anytime in the New Testament, like when Mary sees an angel, she's terrified. So he's like, oh, when I saw the vampire, I was terrified. Like that's how you're supposed to feel, but it's an angel. So you keep thinking like he's got to know, like he's a vampire, right? But he's sorry. I don't like to burp. But I'm drinking seltzer water. Do I have to fight my rival? Uh-oh. What happens if you nuzlocke on the first character? He's in like this denial state where like he has to believe that this has something to do with God and there's a purpose for it. And he's like, it has to be an angel. It has to be. And he has these people in the church that are like telling him like these Bible verses like, no, yeah, it's an angel. So it just reminded me, this was the whole point, reminded me of that church that I went to. Remember the guy, the point that really stuck with me, I'm gonna die. Oh, whatever. What happens if you die? I have a potion though. I'm gonna use a potion. Oh, let's give it one more try. Critical hit. Oh, get out of here. The thing that bothered me about going to that pastor was when he was talking about Revelation, and he's making these interpretations like, oh, we're in the end times, and this is like the maiden of destruction. When you look at gay people, it's like bad, and it means Jesus is coming. And he's making all these kind of wild interpretations, and it bothered me. And then I kind of realized, well, it kind of reinforced when I watched this show, like, okay, that's why it bothers you, because it's like, in the show, he makes an interpretation to Revelation, because I'm like, okay, the big thing about vampires is they can't go out in the sun, right? Like, I'm a Christian. I don't know where it says anywhere in the Bible that, like, you can't go out in the sun, or, like, light is bad. How are they going to justify this? Like, how are they going to be like, oh, you can't go out in the sun, you're a vampire, obviously. But what they do is, spoiler, but they turn it into this end times Revelation thing. And one of the ladies in the church is like, if you look in Revelation, what happens during the end time? God, he pours the sun out, and it becomes darkness. And so she's saying, like, oh, he's preparing his warriors for the end times. So, like, you're gonna be prepared for when the world turns dark. You're gonna, like, thrive in the darkness. So the whole story, I've only watched 5 episodes so far, and there's 7. But, like, it's building up towards this little pastor's, like, wants to build an army of vampires to prepare for the end times, which he thinks are coming. Oh, do I have to beat her? Stop burping. Making interpretations, it's always the thing that's bothered me about Christianity, is like, and what I kind of talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, that one pastor who was saying, like, oh, it's so crystal clear what the Bible says about gay people. I'm like, no, it's not. It's an interpretation. You can't say, like, okay, this is so clear, and so this is what God is saying, so you can't go against it. Like, you can live, I don't know, making interpretations is never good. Just have peace. Don't prepare yourself. Don't hurt people. Don't be afraid. Just live the best you can, and when you die, give that up too. Don't trust anyone that tells you the right thing. You know what the right thing is. That was my note. So what happens in this story, spoiler, the main character, his name is Riley Matt Saracen. He gets bit by the angel, and he turns into a vampire. And so the pastor's trying to convince him, like, God chose you, and you're going to be a part of the army. And Riley's kind of like, you could see him being, he's getting convinced, like, oh, yeah, okay, like, this kind of makes sense. But what he does is, he knows what's right. So he doesn't want to kill anybody, because once he goes outside, he gets, like, really hungry, and he wants to feed on people. And the pastor's telling him that hunger is good. Like, that's God's will. He wants you to be hungry, and if you give yourself up to that hunger, it's okay, because you won't feel guilty. It'll feel like a good thing, and that means that it must be a good thing from God. But I'm looking into this a little bit more, obviously, but it seems like Riley knows. Doesn't matter what the pastor says, doesn't matter what he thinks God's purpose is for him. He has to do what's right, and he doesn't want to kill anybody. He doesn't want to hurt anybody, and he knows if he's going to live like a vampire, he has to hurt people. Like, what is he going to do? He's going to tell people, oh, I'm a vampire, and then what? Like, he still has to eat, otherwise he's going to die. So, my battery's dying. So that's what Riley does. He knows what's right, and he does it. It doesn't matter what the pastor's interpretation, like, you know what's right. You know you're not supposed to hurt people, and you know you're not supposed to be selfish. So that's what religion is about for me, is like when a pastor's up there and he's telling you like all this stuff about like every gay person in the world is sinning and God's coming back and he's gonna judge everybody. I don't connect with that, because I'm like, I know what's right, and I don't feel like it's right to preach this hateful thing. It doesn't, to cause pain is bad. I just live in peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. I really liked all the interpretations the pastor makes in the show. My hands are all sweaty and I can't open my phone. He actually says this. This is my favorite part of the whole show, because this is a problem like that I have with the Old Testament. He says, one of the big plot points is the pastor actually kills somebody and feeds on him, and he doesn't feel guilty about it, and so he's like, oh, what do I do? And then he starts thinking like, wait a minute, in the Old Testament, didn't Moses kill people? Didn't Joseph or Abraham, didn't they all kill people? Didn't Jesus say, I come to bring a sword and not a whatever? Like, that's pretty clear to me. So, like, if I feel God moving through me and I kill somebody, it must be God's will. I really like that, because that's why I won't let someone tell me that what Moses did was right. If you remember, when I was reading the Old Testament, I had a big problem with Moses killing those people in like Exodus 23 or whatever. So I have to get the Pokédex, I think. A lot of the time, like, I'm sure if I brought this up to people, they'd be like, well, it's God's will. He wanted those people to be judged for sinning. And Moses carried out that judgment. But it's not right. It's not right. You can never convince me that Moses killing those people was the right thing. I don't care if, like, you're perceived, like, a Christian might say, oh, you know, you have to trust in God, and that's kind of what they say in the show. Like, trust in God. It might not feel right, but trust in God. His plan, His purpose. Like, and you have no right to question Him, right? Why should the pot say to the potter, like, what is my purpose? That whole thing. Sometimes you're just not allowed to question God's will. But I'm like, no, I don't care if you perceive this as me spitting in God's face. I know it's not right. To me, I'm not spitting in God's face, because I'm like, the version of God that has to exist for me to believe in Him wouldn't do that. I know you're not supposed to say that as a Christian or whatever, but if you want me to believe in a just God, he wouldn't do that. And I don't care. Yeah, I don't know. I get frustrated a little bit sometimes with that. That's it for today, though. But yeah, I think I talked about Midnight Mass as much as I could. I really like it. What was something else? Yeah, I mean, that was my favorite part because he says, Moses killed people. That's why I won't let someone tell me that's right. I don't care if you perceive that I'm disrespecting God. A lot of Christians have this fear of like just disrespecting God and saying something that will be disrespectful, but I feel like you can't do that. You have to know what's right. And you can't be afraid to be disrespectful. I don't know, I feel that way. To stand up to something that you know is wrong, but stand up in a way that's just like peaceful, though. Like, not stand up to be like you're wrong, but to just be the peace. I don't know. I guess we all take it from religion what we want, but I'm always like, blessed are the peacemakers. That's what Jesus said. Theirs is the kingdom of the heaven or whatever. I kind of value peace and love over everything else. Like, and so when Moses kills those families and those kids, you can never convince me that that's what God wanted. Even though it says in the Bible, I would much easier believe that whoever wrote that down just wrote it down wrong, and God didn't tell him to kill those people. Moses just did it by himself, than to believe that God would tell him to do that. I don't believe it. Because it's not right. And I could obviously just be misinterpreting the whole verse and the whole chapter, but anyway, that's it. And Midnight Mass is such a cool name because they have to do Mass at midnight because they can't do it during the day because of the sun. So the pastor at one point is like, okay, we're just going to do it at night. Mass at midnight now. And the town's like, oh, okay. Anyway, see you tomorrow.